Welcome to Cue the Magic, Sing a New Song, a podcast that explores how music therapy can break barriers, spark connections, and change your child's life. I'm your host, Angie Kopshy, a music therapy expert and the founder of the Global Music Therapy Project, a nonprofit organization dedicated to utilizing music's therapeutic power to enhance the lives of kids and parents just like you on a global level. I always say that music therapy is this miraculous thing. That's not miraculous at all. It's science, and you'll be blown away by how simple it is. I am here to help you learn the techniques you need to create a happier, healthier household. Let's tune in together and cue the magic. Welcome back to Cue the Magic, Sing a New Song. I'm your host, Angie Kopshy, and I'm excited to share this week's simple yet powerful try this tip that can make a huge difference in your daily routines, using song for transitions. And in a few weeks, we're going to talk about creating your own songs for transitions, but this week we're talking about using songs that already exist. Transition time, like moving from playtime to bedtime or waking up in the morning, can be tricky for kids on the autism spectrum, but with the right music, you can create a smoother, calmer transition. So how does this work? Songs can serve as a predictable cue that helps your child know what to expect next. Music has the ability to bring structure and familiarity to a situation, which is really helpful for kids who thrive on routine. Whether it's calming them down for bedtime or gently waking them up, the right song can signal that change is coming and provide a sense of comfort and security. So let's start with bedtime. We all know how tough it can be to get a child ready for bed. One song I recommend is Where Do You Sleep by Marie Miller of Rhythm and Strings Music Therapy. She actually created a beautifully illustrated book that's perfect for cuddling up and singing softly together at bedtime. It helps signal that it's time for bed and sets the tone. The predictability of this song helps reduce anxiety and ease your child into a calm, restful state. Now let's talk about morning transitions. Waking up in the morning can sometimes feel jarring or overwhelming. A great song to ease this transition is Good Morning from Songs for Kids on the Autism Spectrum that I recorded with another music therapist and a musical mom with a kiddo on the autism spectrum. The cheerful melody and positive lyrics can gently wake up your child, setting a peaceful, optimistic tone for the day ahead. So here's how you can make this work for your family. 1. Choose a consistent song. Pick one song for a specific transition, like bedtime or wake-up time. Consistency is key to helping your child associate that song with the activity. 2. Play it regularly. Start using that same song every day during that same activity. Over time, your child will begin to expect that song when it's time to transition, making the process smoother. 3. Sing along or participate. If your child enjoys singing or you want to make the moment more interactive, sing along with the song. It's a great way to build connection and make the transition more engaging. Remember, the key here is predictability. These songs act as gentle cues that help prepare your child for what's coming next. And over time, this routine will feel more natural and comforting for them. I'd love to hear how you incorporate music into your transitions. Please share your experiences and let us know what worked for you. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week for another Try This Tip. Today, I'm thrilled to share my interview with Marie Miller, one of my favorite music therapists, really one of my favorite people. We actually shared a grant 10 years ago and created a series of videos to support the families we were working with. And this series is available on our website and YouTube, and at the very least, I recommend checking out video number 10, Best in Show. Marie is a neurologic music therapist based in Maine. She owns Rhythm and Strings Music Therapy, which provides group and individual services to children and young adults with disabilities ages 3 to 21. Marie is passionate about creating multisensory learning experiences for children and young adults. These multisensory learning experiences combine music, movement, and visuals to build skills in the areas of expressive and receptive language, motor skills, and sensory regulation. She's so full of passion, love, and experience, and I really think you're going to love this interview. Hi, I'm Angie Kopshy, your host of Cue the Magic, Sing a New Song, and today we are interviewing Marie Miller. Marie, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, so happy to be here.
So can we just start by having you share a little bit about your background and what brought you to music therapy?
Yeah, sure. So when I first finished college, I got a job in special education and realized pretty quickly that that is the field I wanted to work in, even though it is not what I majored in. And so I was working in special education in New Hampshire, then moved to Oregon, where I was working in an early intervention classroom for children diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And it's here that I began to see, if I added music to a transition, it made that transition easier. If I left a word out of a familiar song during circle time or just, having one-to-one time with a student, if I left a word out of a familiar song, that child who may have struggled to access speech could suddenly fill the word into the song. And I found that the moments I used music, I really connected with these children. All of them were non-speaking, very young. It was their first introduction to a school setting, and many of them really struggled. To come to school was a challenge. It was all different sensory considerations. But if I did something with music, all of a sudden it was, I had one student who would just stare at me whenever I was singing through something, or I'd get out one of the little xylophones and count 1, 2, 3, 4, and she would finish it 5, 6, 7, 8, perfect pitch, and just, finish the phrase where she would have difficulty accessing speech without music. So I didn't know what was happening here, but I knew I wanted to find out, and I knew that I was interested in, that's how I was going to work with children moving forward. I wanted to start a music program for children diagnosed on the autism spectrum. So I was sitting by one of my best friends at an in-service. She was a special education teacher, and I turned to her at a break and I said, I know what I want to do. I want to open up a music program that's an education program that teaches through music. She said, have you heard of music therapy? Because that actually exists. And I had not. And I went home that day and I found that half an hour from my house was a small school in Lake Oswego, Oregon, that had a music therapy program. So I enrolled and worked my butt off to gain some musical skills heading into college. I had some basic skills, but I was not a proficient musician at the time. And you enter with, audition for a specific instrument, and then you show proficiencies in guitar, piano, percussion. And so I knew it's what I wanted to do. And so I worked my rear end off and I was accepted into the program. And when I finished, that's exactly what I wanted to work in a school-based program. And so I ended up I've worked in a variety of schools, some multiple at the same time. And it's what I love to do it. It's just, I work primarily with students who are diagnosed on the autism spectrum, but also I work with children with a variety of disabilities as well.
I feel like my story is similar. Like, I finished my master's in piano. I was even studying music, and still one day someone was like, well, why wouldn't you do music therapy? Because I was like, I love psychology and music, and I had never heard of music therapy.
Never heard of it.
And I ended up in this tiny town in Lake Oswego.
Yeah.
Auditioning.
And never thought in a million years I'd go audition for something. And then, it's pedal to the metal, gain those musical skills. And, 13 years later, it's like, okay, yeah, I got it. But boy, the beginning there. Yep. But I knew it's what I wanted to do. And what it comes down to, really, music therapy, it's keeping a rhythm. Half the time, I work with kids with a lot of sensory sensitivities. Half the time, if we have a group of 4 students who, 3 of 4 are come in dysregulated, we are lowering the lights, I'm ditching the guitar. We are all doing rhythm-based, a lot of movement, proprioceptive input, and bringing that energy down. There are some days where I'll realize, oh my gosh, I only got my guitar out twice to, greet the students and to say goodbye to them, and everything in the middle. And so really share this with families a lot too. And with the, people that I work with, you don't actually have to be a musician to use music skills, to use music to build skills with children. Obviously, our training, it's pretty immersive in child development, psychology, and music skills. But for a parent can use music to build skills in the home, which is, we don't own music and we don't own the, music to build skills. It really is easy to use those things at home.
Yes. Yes. And I feel like, part of what you're talking about here is structure. Like music therapy provides structure, and rhythm is one of the strongest and easiest ways to do that. So this leads right into my next question of like, do you have some techniques that you can share with parents, and maybe specifically related to rhythm?
Yeah, so a lot of times rhythm is incredible. Rhythm activates our motor cortex. It's an incredible tool for building speech and language skills because it's priming and timing our oral motor skills. It's engaging our body. It's when we hear rhythm or participate in a rhythm activity with other people, we're in training with each other and building those kind of that pro-social behavior and connection with other people and fostering that sense of connection. And so with rhythm, I tend to go pretty steady. I like a nice steady. A lot of the kids that I work with really benefit from what you said, structure, predictability, and just a steady grounding rhythm. I have several songs that a lot of them I don't use a recording for, and I'll come in. If I have a group that comes in with energy, I'm not going to go to my slowest, calmest song because it's that natural. It's in our nature to like kind of fight against that and be almost irritated by being met with such an opposition that I tend to have a faster rhythm, faster pace and tempo, and maybe more activating movements like clapping or stomping or patting our legs, and then slowly and very subtly slowing that down and transitioning to more proprioceptive input like squeezing our hands, brushing our arms, brushing our legs, squeezing our arms, and regulating our bodies. And you're making such a slow tempo change that it's not noticeable, but by the end, and often our movement songs will have deep breathing in them as well. And at the end, it's like, it feels like magic, but it's not. It's music. And humans are we're so primed for music. We're such musical beings, it's a cross culture. And so if I do this with a recorded song, I may start it at like 106. So I'll make a little beat or something in GarageBand and we'll be moving to it very structured. I like to do purposeful movements. Again, starting with maybe clapping and stomping. And then we're going to move to squeezing our hands, brushing our legs, squeezing our head. And then I might get my phone out and I'll change it just a little bit, like just a tiny bit lower. So maybe we're at like 102. And then by the end of the song, we might be down to 98. And the kids just naturally entrain with that. And so I've met them where they are, kind of a faster 106. And I brought that down. And so even if some of my students aren't motor imitating all of the movements, even if they're just listening to it, their body is coming down with that beat.
Yeah. So parents, there are some apps out there for metronome, right?
Yes.
Do you have any favorites that you would recommend?
So with a metronome, I often feel you really have to sing a song with it, because I have found that if I just use a metronome with kids to try to keep the beat, they get irritated by it. So I just found this app. Most of the time I'm changing the tempo rate within GarageBand on my iPad. I think the app is called Music Speed. And so when I open it up, so this is a song that I created. I don't know if you can see it even.
Yeah.
I created a song in GarageBand. I put it in this Music Speed. So if I started at 100%, I know that it's at 106. And I'm only sliding it down very small increments to help kind of help students bring their energy down, ground, regulate, and then doing those purposeful. A lot of times I think we see a child who has a lot of energy. And for example, in one of our groups yesterday, we had a child who was falling out of his chair. He was bumping into his staff person next to him. He was trying to dangle his head upside down. And those are all indications of needing proprioceptive input. And that is like seeking that. If you have a kid who's just always kind of seems maybe a little rough, he's always bumping into things or she's always bumping into things, that's seeking that proprioceptive input, so that sensory systems in our muscles, our joints, our skin, and we get that input from, deep pressure or jumping. And I think a lot of people, and me, definitely, before I learned about sensory systems, if I see someone with energy, I'm like, oh my gosh, let's get this kid jumping. Let's put him on a bike. Let's get him, spinning or, just really big, excited movements. Let's just put a song on and get these kids to jump. That was circle time at school, was just kind of free dance. And now I've learned about sensory systems, and you want purposeful, organized, grounding. So seated movement songs are my favorite. Keeps kids grounded because it keeps the group grounded. If we get everybody up, that's adding a lot of extra movement, sound, and we may be getting a little energy out, but we're not helping someone who is dysregulated. So yes, it's definitely great to get that exercise, biking, swinging, jumping on a trampoline. But in those moments of dysregulation, those proprioceptive grounding movements or weighted blanket, those are very effective.
So do you have a go-to song that you might use in a situation like that?
They're my favorite songs too. I have a bunch that I'll just pull out. We start every session, we'll start with a greeting song, and then it's always a seated movement song that does not have guitar. It has little extra in it so that we're all settling in. Group spaces are hard. And so I have one song that will work our way up our body. So I start with our feet, and you can just pretend I'm stomping my feet right now. I'm not going to stomp on the recording, but I'll say, my feet are ready for the day. My feet are ready for the day. And then we do a hand jive. I got to get my hands way up here, though. It's usually around my waist. It's gonna be a good day today. It's gonna be a good day today. So breathe in, breathe out. My body is ready for the day. And so this song moves our way up our body. And so this movement that's a really powerful movement, tricky one for a lot of kids. So is rolling hands because it's encouraging that crossing midline. So we're going to cross midline in every single motor song, even if it's just squeezing arms, because when we cross our midline, it's that corpus callosum. It's integrating the connection and communication between our right hemisphere and left hemisphere. And so when I'm creating a movement song, it's going to kind of have that steady. And then we're going to go up to my legs are ready for the day. So we're starting out with two activating movements which are stomping and patting. And I'm singing it this is this tempo I wrote it in. If my kids come in really heightened, I'm going to start it. My feet are ready for the day. And by the end, my arms are ready for the day. My arms are ready for the day. And I'm lowering my volume. It's gonna be a good day today. It's gonna be a good day today. So breathe in, breathe out. My body is ready for the day. 3, 2, 1, and stop. And so just that progression starting at the bottom is a really powerful progression. We're going to start at the bottom of so I start with feet, and then we pat legs, and then we're going to switch to brushing legs, which is more of a grounding movement, that proprioceptive deep pressure input, brushing our legs. So when I say brushing our legs, not everyone knows what that is, but I'm basically starting kind of towards my mid thigh and brushing over the top of my knee. Some kids like to go all the way down to their ankles. That's great sensory input, brushing. And so the next thing we do is a sway. So that's for vestibular input. And that's kind of a mixed activating and grounding. And I'll say, my middle is ready for the day. Then we're doing arms. So there's another great kind of sensory input, brushing. I like to teach kids how to provide their own sensory input because a lot of my students are tactile defensive to other people touching them. It does not feel good to them. So if we can teach them to provide their own tactile input when they are sensory seeking, that can be a really great tool for them to have in their toolbox. And then depending on how my kid are, if they're really engaged, I'm going to add in my shoulders are ready, because rolling our shoulders and lifting our shoulders is just a great way to kind of calm our bodies down. It just signals to our body, I'm okay. And so, but if I feel like kids are ready to wrap it up, you can eliminate any pieces of that. And then I always end with squeezing arms, which is great for crossing our midline, bilateral coordination, and that great deep proprioceptive input. And I actually recently had one of the SLPs that I work with say that they were driving in the van to go do a community outing. And one of my students who has just beginning to develop speech, but he will often sing the songs. He's one of our high school students. And he was singing that in the van ride, like kind of trying to calm himself down. I don't remember if they were going to the community outing or on the way back. And just he was going through the song. And I was like, oh, this is what this is why it's so effective, because music, because it's that global experience in the brain, we retain it. It's easier to comprehend, and we can retain it and access it when we need it. So those messages of like, this is how I can calm my body down when I need to. So yeah, that's a go-to. I do really short ones too. Like I'll just say, okay, in between, say we've done, we often do, I lead speech therapy groups. So we often have a topic of the day where we're all going around the room and sharing whatever the topic is. And so maybe between that and the next thing, I'm doing a motor input, sensory input song. And so I'll say, okay, we're going to do our quick 1 to 8. And I'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we'll squeeze our arms. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And then with some groups, I'll say, and shake it out, because our kids, sometimes they do, and the staff too, I think you don't realize how much tension you hold. And then getting those little musical cues and hearing those prompts, and everyone's like, you can see the whole group like, I needed that.
I love it. So much richness in all of that. But you're talking about working with speech therapists and leading speech therapy groups. So I actually want to jump over to some of the things that you've created. And one of the things is make it multisensory, so I'm wondering if you can say more about that. And then my question is also with that and with the seasonal resource package, it's not just for music therapists potentially, like also maybe for parents.
Make it multisensory. I will say it could easily be for parents. There are a lot of songs that I do accompany, so it's geared towards music therapists. There are plenty of songs in it that are not accompanied that you could, there's a lot of those motor songs. Largely, it's songs with visuals. You don't actually need to accompany anything. The course was designed for music therapists, but it really easily could be accessed by anyone who doesn't play an instrument, because the focus is the rhythm is what's important, and then making it multisensory, adding movements in, having a tune, and visuals or props. They're just offering so many opportunities for children to engage and to kind of comprehend and to retain. And, any way that you can add in multisensory components, you're going to be encouraging more activation in the brain and, lighting up the whole brain using music, movement, and visuals. So I would say make it multisensory. It was created for music therapists. It's a continuing education opportunity for music therapists, but it could easily be adapted. Any of the songs in there that are accompanied could be done without accompaniment. All those songs largely target expressive and receptive language skills, motor skills, and sensory regulation. So I could see them being great tools for families at home. I did create a little video series during the pandemic for my students called Sing, Move, Shine. That is just three just really kind of low key songs, 3 sessions. So 3 20-minute sessions for sensory regulation, speech and language skills, and motor skills. And then the seasonal package, as you mentioned, one whole package only has one song that's accompanied. So that, I think it was one of the spring ones. And I call them seasonal packages, but there's like one song that's specific to that season in there. It's just how I group my year so that I can kind of group my songs and just cycle through them each school year. So they are seasonal because it's called like spring resource package, but some of those have minimal accompaniment because a lot of my groups, if I need my hands to help provide some deep pressure or to hold up a visual or to model something.
So with those seasonal resource packages, it seems like those definitely could be helpful for occupational therapists, speech therapists, teachers, parents,
yes. Yeah.
all the things.
Yeah, because almost every song will have multiple targets in it, usually motor and expressive and receptive language skills. So I have co-treated quite a bit with OTs, PTs, and SLPs. So I feel so lucky because over the years I've gained so much knowledge that, heading into music therapy from working in special education, I already felt like, oh my gosh, I have all these skills I'm carrying over and all this understanding of, sensory processing disorders and autism. And then I felt so lucky to just have these amazing, specialists that I got to work with and learn more. And I worked with TVIs for a while so now I feel really lucky when I have a student that has cortical visual impairment and I can actually present them with all the appropriate materials because I've learned from the TVI, or that's the teacher of the visually impaired. And abbreviations, I try not to use those because, when I first started out, I was like, what's that? What's that? So TVI is teacher of the visually impaired. I like to kind of spell these out because when I first started, everyone throws these abbreviations, especially when I'd first go to my very first IEP meetings, and I'd hear just constant abbreviations. So it's occupational therapist is OT, PT is physical therapist, and then SLP is speech language pathologist. I've worked with some incredible teachers of the visually impaired. So several of my students have cortical visual impairment. And I feel so lucky to have had these incredible resources to then be like, oh, look, I've created all these, tactile or, simplified visuals for cortical visual impairment. So yeah, working with other specialists, I'm so lucky to. And it happens often, I think, in music therapy.
Well, so can you say more? So a parent who has not had music therapy before, and all of a sudden you're talking about collaborating with other therapists, like what does that look like hypothetically for a family?
Yeah. So I largely am school-based. And so music is so motivating. So I think when we collaborate, we can sort of add in that motivational piece, but also that rhythm, activating the motor cortex and that full brain, that it's just a global experience in the brain. So it lights up all the areas. So it really can be used to facilitate in physical therapy movements and motivate and set a pace for maybe gait training or something. And in occupational therapy, I've worked a lot with occupational therapists because we're doing a lot with, manipulating different things or building skills and, building our skills in two-step directions and things like that, where we can teach, it's such a great collaboration because I'm learning, okay, these are the steps that, to get there. And then I'm putting the song to it. So it's like, well, I know, music, because it's a global experience, they're going to retain those steps easier than if we just taught them the steps verbally. And so they can sing in their head, or say we're, working on, following a direction. And I said, Angie, can you pick up the pen and then, pick up the pen and then put the paper on the desk. And you may hear the end of that. And so if you are developing your receptive language skills, you may have heard the end of that, put the paper on the desk. But if I'm like, gonna pick up the pen, put the paper on the desk, pick up the pen, then put the paper on the desk. So the kid is thinking in their head, and my come up with something a little better than that. It was kind of on the spot. But the kid in their head can hear that tune back. Gonna pick up the pen, put the paper on the desk. So I think, and the more we work side by side with specialists, I think they really see the benefit. I actually had a music therapist, our speech therapist that I worked with at 2 different schools. We sort of followed each other around. And she actually was the one who pulled me into this speech therapy team. So I lead 8 groups at this amazing school in New Hampshire. And they're all speech therapy groups. So the speech therapists are each paired with a student, and I'm going off their goals for most of our early AC device users. And so I'm using their goals to write my songs to build these skills. And then each student is paired with an SLP who's helping get the, modeling. And so that's what it would look like in a school setting. But if for a parent who is seeking services, private services outside of the home, only had that happen once, in which a parent, their child really loved music therapy, really struggled with physical therapy, did not like to go. And so this was actually back when I was in Oregon. And so I would go with the child. It was a private pay. The parent physical therapy was covered by insurance, and then private pay music therapy to do a co-treat. And I would add music. I would bring some of the favorite books for when the child was working on lying in a certain position, and we'd do Baby Beluga, or, I'd get some of my visuals out or tangible props for them to work on moving towards. And so that was a really neat collaboration. And I'm sure I don't know of any off the top of my head for parents to look into, but I am sure there are co-treats out there that are outside of the school systems. But I'm just in the school system, so that's what I've experienced.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I feel so lucky. I've worked just on this incredible team that, you're a music therapist, for a long time, it's just see it in action. Just, there's this feeling of it's almost like magic, but it's not. It's science. It's the brain, but you have to see it in action. It's not a glorified music group. And so to have an entire school and all the specialists be so on board with this treatment and with this form of therapy it's pretty amazing. And music it seems like magic. It's, it's an incredible tool, but it's not. It's science.
It's science. So I would love for you to talk a little bit more about how you use books, and then talk about your book in particular.
Yeah, so I love Singable books. Singable books are such a wonderful way to connect with a child. So when we sing with somebody else, or if we listen to a song together, we entrain. Singing together fosters these feelings of togetherness and connection and belonging. And so sharing a singable book with a child is just such a great way to kind of foster that feeling of connection and belonging and bonding. But it's also an incredible tool for building language skills. I love using a singable book because with music, repetition is the key. So we use songs where the target will be in the repeating portion. So if we're, building a skill that we want them to work on the word more, we're going to put that in the chorus, and it's going to repeat a bunch, and they're going to get cued to fill that in. So in a singable book, that repeating chorus, a child can learn that song, and they're going to learn that tune before they're even maybe able to read. And they're going to have that great success moment, either filling in a word that you leave out or follow the song. So the kids have that idea of like, oh, we're going to look at this page now. And then there's that, end of a musical phrase. And that's often when we turn the page. And so kids are beginning to get build those literacy skills. So they'll hear the song in their head, and they're going to start identifying the words that they're seeing with the song that they're hearing. And so when I wanted this first song I decided to do, I'm hoping to do more at some point, but the first song I decided to put into a book is Where Do You Sleep? And I did this one because it was a favorite among so many of my students, but also staff would always request it. And It's like, okay, well, I want to do a book that I know that the adults will like also. And so I did Where Do You Sleep? And I set it up for beginning literacy. So I set Where Do You Sleep up. So this is Where Do You Sleep with the little fox on the front. So I set it up so that the text is on the left, isolated from the image on every page, except for the chorus, of course. The chorus gets a little wild. We'll get there in a second. Except for the chorus. And so I did that because I wanted kids to really hear that. And every animal is a single syllable animal. So it's cow, 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 bird, 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 bear, 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 fox, 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 whale, 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 bat, bat, bat. So that children who are just beginning to access speech can have a really successful single syllable animal. And so the chorus of a book and of a song is so repetitive, so that cow, 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 where do you sleep? The children just know that. They know by the end of the reading it one time, they can sing along with the chorus. And that's such a feeling of independence, autonomy, success. And so I love just singable books. I actually, for March, I do a singable book every day of the month because it's reading month. So we're on day 19. It's a labor of love. But on Instagram, I do have a single book every day of the month in March, and it's all saved too. So if families are on Instagram, you can look in my highlights section under singable books, and I've got, 31 days in March. So that's 31 of my favorite singable books. And it was honestly hard to narrow it down to 31 because so not only do you have the music component, which is engaging, it's stimulating, and it just is this connecting piece and rhythm. It's children, I find, who have a hard time sitting through a book. You turn the page and then they want to turn all the pages really fast. Adding music sets that, knowing when to turn the page, and adds that, so music activates our reward centers. So we're getting that little dopamine. It releases dopamine. So we're getting that little boost while we're listening to it. So it's engaging, and kids can kind of sit for longer when they're doing singable books. And on top of all that, we have visuals. So that's making it multisensory. So the kids are seeing a picture of what their song is about. And it's just building those language skills and building that vocabulary, because we're, looking at the pictures and, the bat is in a cave. The whale is in the sea. And so I love singable books, and they're a really great tool. And some singable books even have movements paired with them. Mine has sign language paired with the animals, which I have on my website, so you can learn the animal signs. I'm not fluent in sign language, but I've been taking lessons from a deaf teacher for a long time. And so that's just a great tool also for expressive and receptive language. I use sign language in almost all of our songs just for an additional way to access language for our students who are non-speaking. And so, but there are there's Coming Around the Mountain. I just love it because in the back, it has a list of all the movements it suggests that you pair with each page. And I will say that Coming Around the Mountain singable book back in, 2010, Angie and I were leading music groups with Coming Around the Mountain. And this is what totally turned me on to adding visuals, because I found that for a while, we were just adding the words, toot, toot, she'll be, whoa, back. I had to remember. I haven't done that one in a while. And then adding the visuals. I started adding visuals and creating visuals for all the songs. And I just found it was this whole other layer of engagement, sort of like, or just like a singable book. It adds that visual component, activating that area of the brain, builds comprehension, but there's the container again. So I love anything that provides a container. So music provides a container because it is a set structure. It's predictable. We know when it's going to end. So that reduces anxiety. Adding visuals. Okay, the kids learn this song has 5 pictures in it. And at the end, we say goodbye to every picture and I stack them back up. That song is over. A book, I know how it ends. That book is over. So that predictability and that routine can really reduce anxiety and also just set kids up for success. So I love Singable books and visuals.
Yes. So Marie's site has great resources on it. You can find her. Well, tell us about what you have on your site.
Yeah. So if the Singable books, I need to add to my site. In my blog, my very neglected blog, I do have top 12 Singable books. But if you are on Instagram, in my reels, and I think Angie has a way to link my Instagram here, I have in the highlights section at the top, it will be 31 books in that highlight section. We're on 19 right now because it's the 19th. And so on the website, I have my course. I have the book where you can peek inside. You can listen to the recording of the book. And actually the entire book is on YouTube. So you can hear and see the entire book on YouTube. I wanted it to be accessible and also for people to be able to just kind of pull up their phone or computer. And I have a lot of kids that have the book and still like to, have it sung to them. They like to hear, bring it up on YouTube and hear it. And so I have the resource packages on my website. What else is there?
Those are I
think that might be, yeah.
For people to come and check out, yes, your book and the whole Where Do You Sleep package potentially, and then make it multisensory and your seasonal resource packages. And then you have fun visuals. You have at least parents can see examples of what you're talking about when you say visuals.
Yes, for a long time, before the days of Canva, we had to buy all of our visuals or go to Creative Commons. And so I was, just buying tons of visuals from Shutterstock for a long time and still love you, Shutterstock. But Canva has been amazing. I use Canva to create all of my visuals. So for a song, just to kind of explain, thank you for bringing that up. Sometimes I just assume everyone knows, but a visual could be a visual schedule or just one cue. And for my visuals, it'll be basically a visual for each verse of the song. Almost all my songs tell a story. And so, for example, I have a song about animals in a tree. And so we get this huge tree out and I'm putting the tree down. And then I have a picture for each animal. We're pairing sign language with each animal. And then we're doing some movement. So we're patting our legs, we're stretching up, we're stretching down. And so this multi-sensory experience, where the visuals provide that container. And also visuals provide a great way to be able to reflect back on, follow-up questions. So some of our students who are working on who lived in the tree or where did he go? So they can then look back at the pictures. I just love supplying kids with as many different avenues to comprehend, but also to reduce. I was a student who literally dreaded being called on so much that it would preoccupy because I had a hard time following along at times. And it would preoccupy my brain so much worrying about being called on that I would have no idea what was happening. My younger years, elementary age. And so I like the students to have all the information they need. So if we're talking about in our groups, signs of spring. What do we observe in spring? So I have the sentence with the icons. A lot of my students are visual. They benefit from pictures. And then I have all the options underneath and they can pick one of mine and then type it out on their AC device. I'm not just asking this question with no visuals because someone that struggles with receptive language may not have caught that. So I add visuals to all my songs and also just little picture icons to support whatever the discussion is. But yeah, visuals just are a great way to then go back to a topic.
Yes. Yes. And I wanted to tell everyone. So Maria and I ended up sharing a grant 10 years ago.
Yes.
And we had a 10-week series.
Yes.
And we actually made videos it was mostly to support the parents. Like we see that kiddo
Yeah.
for an hour and then they're gone for a week. And so it's called Music Therapy Outreach Series. And that is on the Global Music Therapy Project's website. And I always, at the very least, encourage parents to check out number 10, which is our most requested. There's a different word. It's like greatest hits.
Greatest hits. Yeah. Someone recently found those and we're like, I found a young Marie. And I was like, what? She's like, I found a young Marie on YouTube.
I love it. So when we were
The beginning years.
our beginning years, but
Beginning years.
just the other day I used Bear Hunt for the first time with a kiddo, but we had watched the video before.
Yeah.
Like that was as close as I could get to.
Did you and I use visuals for Bear Hunt? I can't remember. I since added them in. I have visuals for Bear Hunt now.
I can't remember if we just used the book. I feel like you did. Yes. There's a picture of a bear on there. There's a picture of the grass. I feel like you had already created visuals. And then
might have been
I usually use the drum in there too for the 1, 2, 3. And it's just like a nice little distraction break. But so we have that series. So between the two of us, lots of resources that can help parents see what we are talking about right now. So
I'm trying to think. I know there's a few examples on my YouTube as well. A few songs that I've just put up there. I need to get better about it because I have some students at school that just go home and request it my YouTube channel, but there's only a handful of songs on there. But there are some on there to give the idea of, I created a lot during the pandemic, but it's not all up there anymore.
No, but you have great stuff on your website and on YouTube. It's fantastic. And Instagram. That's amazing. It's great. Okay, I have 2 more questions for you. Actually, let's start with this one. Do you have any final words of advice for parents who are just starting to explore music therapy as a tool for their child's development?
Yeah, I think that's great if you're looking into music therapy for your child. And I also want to say that the way music therapists practice, there's just a ton of different methods and ways that music therapists practice. So I will say, like, the way that I implement material is very structured. It's very focused on sensory systems, and other music therapists I know are really improvisational. There's going to be a little more freedom in a session, less structure. And so as you gather information, and maybe you only have one music therapist in your area, it depends on where you're living. But if you do have kind of a few in your area, kind of find out how they practice, and you know your child, and you know what method feels like and what kind of personality or what their background and how they provide services, kind of what resonates with you that you feel would be beneficial for your child. And it's like with any specialist, there's a ton of different providers out there, and there's a good fit for everybody. And sometimes it's just, finding that right fit. And there's also often, I know a lot of the therapists that provide individual services will also have small groups. So if it's something that you wanted to just explore a little bit, I would recommend trying a small group and then adding one-to-one is amazing because it will be just tailored towards your child. And especially if they really are needing to develop some skills before adding in a bunch of other kids and sounds. And if the goal is to develop peer interactions and build some social skills, then yeah, group is great. But a one-to-one, they'll really tailor it to your child's needs and likes. But a lot of those little small group settings are a great way to sort of just have an introduction to it. And I would also say, if you feel that, oh my gosh, my child's really not engaging, they're kind of all over the room, or they just didn't really seem to engage or participate, give it 10 weeks. I always say 8 to 10 weeks is that, like, it takes a long time to adjust to a new group, to adjust to new expectations, and just to kind of for the material to become familiar. With a lot of my groups, I write all of my songs for my kids, so nothing is familiar to them in the beginning. So that 8 to 10 week in is when it's like, I like the song, it's familiar and I know what to do. And so I I always say for any therapy, or any experience really, that 8 to 10 week span, I feel, and that's once a week. Obviously, if you're having it like 2 or 3 times a week, then you probably don't need to do 8 to 10 weeks to know if it's the right fit.
Yes. Yes to all of that. I love it. Okay. Last question. What's the most rewarding part of your job as a music therapist?
Oh my gosh. I feel beyond lucky to, one, the work. I love creating. I love music. So I feel like and I love working with kids, and I love working especially with kids with disabilities. It's just, I love these kids. They work harder than any other kid will ever have to work. And music is a way to build skills and it's so joyful. So we bring this kind of medium that is just fun and engaging and successful. And I feel so lucky to get to support these kids. And I often think about, a few years ago, I was at another school, and one of the ed techs was sitting with a student who was not yet motor imitating. He was 5 years old. And all of a sudden in one of our movement songs, he began to imitate some of the movements, and he imitated like 2 or 3 different movements. And this is a student who had because I'm a big proponent on, it is okay to just take it in. Please no hand over hand, maybe a slight prompt, but they're going to learn a lot more and build those skills a lot more if they do it independently. And so we do slight prompts, no hand over hand. And all of a sudden he was like clapping. He had been watching for, 3 months, taking it in, slight prompt here and there. And then in the ed tech, her eyes just welled up with tears. And she said, she kind of looked at me and she was just saying, I feel like I just watched my own child take his first steps. And I feel like I get that feeling so often. And just that feeling of, it feels like, music is magic. I've said it a couple of times now, but it just supports enough that activating the motor cortex and, activating the language centers. And it just provides those tools that we get to watch children build skills all the time. And it's just so incredible to be a little piece of that puzzle and supporting them. Because I work with kids ages 5 to 22. And so even 22, like our brains are always like neuroplasticity. Our brains are always developing and changing, and just watching kids acquire skills that are going to enhance their lives and make their lives easier. It's so rewarding.
Yes, agreed. Thank you so much. This is Marie Miller.
Thanks for having me, Angie.
Yeah. So tell us where we can find you.
So you can find my website is www.rhythmandstrings.com. And I'm on Instagram. I think Angie's going to link the Instagram, and Facebook and YouTube is just Rhythm and Strings Music Therapy YouTube channel.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Cue the Magic Sing a New Song podcast. Make sure to subscribe to our newsletter and check out our resources at globalmusictherapyproject.com. Before you go, here's one of our songs, Good Morning, from Songs for Kids on the Autism Spectrum that we wrote to help kiddos transition into a beautiful morning. The song is also available in Spanish with our latest album. See you on the next episode.
Good morning, my love. Good morning, my love. Good morning, my love. Good morning, my love. Open the blinds. I'm feeling so fine. Good morning, my love. Good morning, my love. Good morning, my love. Good morning, my love. It's a new day. What shall we play? Won't you give me some hugs? Won't you give me some snug?